you. Welcome to this year edition. This is the 2023 I don't know, rundown. Like, what can we expect in 2023? For those of you that don't know me, my name is Louisa Munson from Feel Good Astrology. And I'm hoping that we can have a year where we feel freer, lighter, a lot clearer about where we're going, and just feel like we're in control of our lives somehow. Has that kind of escaped us over the last few years? I'm not sure. Anyway, I've had a good old look at the planetary placements over the next few years. But this, obviously we're not going to go that far into the future. There might be some references to it, but we're going to have a look at 2023 month by month. And it's really just to give you a sort of heads up as to the energies that are coming in and an overview, like connecting all the months, like how does 2023 look as a picture? And if it was a picture, which months are going to take center stage and which ones, can you relax a little bit and put your feet up? I have to say it's a pretty action-packed year. We've got Pluto changing signs. We've also got Saturn changing signs. Jupiter's also changing signs. And guess what? Wow, Saturn and Pluto are changing signs in the same month. We've also got the North Node changing signs. There's a lot going on, and we're finally going to get rid of that awful square between Saturn and Uranus that we've been really under the pressure of for definitely the last year, when it was pretty much in effect all year, bar a couple of weeks. It just faded away and then came back in again. So yes, some pressures are relieving, and then we're going to be replacing them with new ones. So yeah, should we just dive in? First of all, I just kind of want to show you, on top of doing a load of charts, I've also drawn up a long list of all the different astrological events that I see going on in this month ahead. And just to kind of show you what I'm looking at here, you probably can't like read it word for word or anything like that, but you'll see that some months just have a lot more. Notice I've put March and April at the top here. That's because March and April, I didn't finish writing it when I went live or started recording this. So yeah, January has got fairly benign things going on. All of the entries that are kind of clear, that are not highlighted, they're kind of standard things, and things that we can all really cope with very easily. Energies that we can probably understand and maybe are used to. Then we've got, as we head into March time, you'll notice I've got some highlighted entries, and these are the ones that I think are quite interesting, and that might take a little bit of unpacking. They're a little bit special. They're a little bit different, that it's not the usual energy that we might be used to. The ones in blue, in green, are showing us the changes of the season, and obviously that's just a normal cycle of time. But then I've highlighted this area here because this isn't exactly an event, but as I see it, from the 22nd of February up until the 5th of April, we've got like this doorway of understanding wounds and our childhood trauma. I see it as a healing event, as we've got the moon, Venus, Mercury, Jupiter, and the sun all going into a conjunction with Chiron. And there's a few times when there's 2 to 3 planets all in an alignment with Chiron at the same time. So it's a very, very chronic month, I guess we could say, which, if I said it very quickly, would sound like chronic. And for some of us, it might really feel chronic. Especially those of you who have Chiron in the sign of Aries. I'm one of them. I'm coming up for my Chiron return next year, and it happens, it starts coming in just before your 50th birthday and eases off just after. So the Chiron return marks a point in time where we really do get the chance to heal everything that's sort of left unsaid, that we haven't really learned how to deal with yet. But to me, it feels like what's coming up in 2023 is like we're all getting a taster of it. In particular, those people that are coming up to their Chiron return or going through it right now. So maybe people from, say, In particular, I would say people born from like 71, 72 up to say 76 could be really feeling this aspect quite a lot, quite considerably. But anyone that's got old wounds, like calling out, crying out for healing, this is a time when it could get slightly worse before it gets better. So healing is a really, really big theme in springtime. Now, in March as well, we've also got 8 planets changing signs. Now, you know, the moon changes signs all the time. I haven't included the moon. And the sun, okay, it does change signs once a month. And usually we have Mercury changing signs, and often we have Venus changing signs. But we've got Pluto, Saturn, and Mars changing signs, as well as the Sun and Mercury and Venus. So that's a pretty intense month. And it's also a season changer. So what I was going to do is bring up each one of the charts relating to 1 month at a time, and kind of run you through what's going on. You know, there are quite a few things going on. Obviously, we've got new moons and full moons. We've also got eclipses to bear in mind because they change the energy of things. And then we've got a few big events like Jupiter going into a conjunction with Chiron. You know, these slower moving cosmic entities or cosmic energies, when they come together, it marks something quite new. It marks a new energy and a very strong reset point. So I'm going to take you just through 12 charts and unpack it as I go. So hopefully this will be useful. Also, just to let you know, I'm starting up a monthly, like a month ahead reading. So I'm going to be doing like January, I've already recorded. I'll be doing February in the month of January and putting it out there, and so on and so forth. So this is really just to set the scene. And there'll be a lot more detailed information coming out each month on a month by month basis. So let's have a look now. I'm just going to share my screen. So the first thing I'm going to have a look at then is this January chart. So this is a chart for the 1st of January 2023. It's literally 1 minute past midnight. Now, in January, the overall, like as we go into the new year, one of the themes I see is we've got this interesting energy between Jupiter and Ceres. Now, they're both in the early degrees of Aries and Libra. Jupiter in the sign of Aries is wanting to get a move on. Okay, Jupiter's been a little bit lackadaisical in the sign of Pisces. It's just changed signs at the end of December 2022. And Jupiter is about expansion and it's about moving things forward. When Jupiter went into the sign of Aries, it's like saying, okay, it's time for us to start expanding. It's time for us to start considering what we're here for. It's time for us to start getting a little bit more hopeful and a bit more realistic in life. Now, at the same time, we've also got the Sun, we've got Mercury, Venus, and Pluto. Now, something worth bearing in mind is also that the new year starts off with Venus and Pluto in a conjunction at 27 degrees. Now, I've spoken a little bit about this in the in-depth January update, but to me it feels like whatever narrative has been going on in terms of illness, you know what I'm talking about. To me it feels like we're seeing it from a whole new perspective. There's a whole new level of interest, a whole new level of understanding about it, and I think there's a desire for people to come together again and not to be so polar. So it seems to me that humanity is wanting to move forwards quite hopefully and with a lot of clarity. They're not wanting to be in this slightly confused, slightly euphoric, slightly unclear position. Because for those of you that were watching these sort of forecasts last year, you might have remembered early spring last year, I was talking about the effect of Jupiter and Neptune coming together, and they'd come together for the first time in hundreds of years, I believe. I can't remember off the top of my head how long it had been, but it was a very, very rare thing. Jupiter and Neptune coming together in Pisces. They're both rulers of Pisces, but it kind of brought up this feeling of maybe fake safety, a lot of confusion because it's all sort of very mystical. I do see it as being one of these things that has raised a level of confusion, but also raised a level of spirituality. They kind of go hand in hand. As the mind opens, we see new perspectives, and it can get a bit crowded in there unless we're very, very good at understanding what's going on. For a lot of people who weren't sort of using that energy to grow in spirituality, it's not as if you really have the choice, I don't suppose, but I think when these energies come in and enliven us in some way or wake us up to different potentials, if you're not expecting it, I think it can bring on a lot of confusion, a lot of I see like manipulations, unclear perspectives. It creates almost like this great big, like this kind of murkiness that's very difficult to navigate. And so Jupiter going into the sign of Aries is saying, I'm coming out of this unclear stage. I'm getting a lot more clear and passionate. And then with all these planets here in Capricorn, it's also, people are wanting to be quite practical. There's this practical need to get a grip with things. So the things that we've been ignoring, for instance, I'm pretty sure quite a few people during the pandemic not only weren't getting their health looked at because they couldn't, or hospitals were crowded, or there was this, that, and the other happening, lots of distractions and delays. But also, I don't think people were looking into their finances as much. They weren't looking into, it was almost like, if I can look away and be distracted somewhere else, I'm going to be okay. I think now the blinkers are coming off and people are really wanting to look at what's underneath the rug. What have we swept away? And so I do see the start of the year being very practical, being a time when we actually start talking to each other again. Even if we're not, quote unquote, like seeing the narrative and the perspective as the same, I see that people are coming together and at least wanting to be a bit curious about what's been going on for each other. It's almost as if we're taking the personal side of it all away and just looking at facts. Now, it's interesting as well because we've got this Pallas Athena opposition to Mercury retrograde opposition, because as we go into January, it is with Mars retrograde and Mercury retrograde, which is two very personal planets retrograde. So again, there's this sort of energy that's suppressing humanity and keeping them a little bit inward, so that we can review our actions, review our thinking, review our conversations, and start kind of taking a few steps back and just getting a bit clearer. At the time of the full moon, which I believe is, let me just double check. The full moon in January is on the 6th at 15 degrees in the sign of Cancer. So on the 6th, we've got this full moon between Mercury and Pallas Athena. And in fact, I'm actually just going to go to the right. Let me go to month by month. Yeah, on the 6th, we've got this fantastic full moon, which I'm talking about quite a bit in the overall forecast, but it's worth looking out for because it's a time when our conscious thoughts that we've put our personality on, all of our ideas and opinions are very much challenged by our intuitive knowings up here. And also they're in a tight square to Chiron, sort of indicating that we're about to change, we're about to grow, we're about to experience a bit of an epiphany. We're about to move forwards in our life in some way. And it's a time to, yes, look at facts, also analyze where these facts are coming from. That's always a good thing. But also to notice what's going on inside internally, and to pay our intuitions a little bit of respect. It's almost as if we've got the mind and body working together. So it's not just you driving your body and saying, this is what's going on, rah, 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 being very sort of in your rational space, but it's almost like you're talking to your body, you're actually listening to the wisdom of your body. Because if you do talk to your body will start to talk back to you. I know that sounds bonkers, but just trust me. There's a really great audiobook called Body Whispering by Dr. Dane here that sort of explains a lot of that. So the full moon on the 6th is pretty important, I would say. And it's moving us along. Now, something else that is going on in January is the new moon. And this is in the sign of Aquarius. Now, in between the full moon and the new moon, we've got Mars going direct and Mercury going direct. So as we go through the month, it feels like we're starting to come into action. It's almost like we're getting ready to go back to school or getting ready to go back to work, which, you know, usually happens in the first week of January. And I'm sure it has done. But what I'm really getting from this is that we're not really in our swing of things until around the 20th to 22nd of January. And on the 20th, it's like on the 20th, we've actually got the sun going into the sign of Aquarius. On the 21st, here we've got the new moon in Aquarius, and then the very next day, Uranus, which is the ruler of Aquarius, is going direct. So it feels like things are starting to move again, and we're coming out of our hibernation and our getting organized energy, and we're going into this energy of fun and starting to move forwards again. The moon and the sun are beautifully connected to Mars and beautifully connected to Ceres. To me, what that's saying is we're looking after ourselves. We're giving ourselves new perspectives. We're looking after ourselves. We're really listening to ourselves, and we're starting to move our bodies a little bit. We're starting to move forwards, and also starting to plan in a few adventures. Now, might I say and suggest just a little bit of ahead of time, if you are planning holidays and planning different things to occur this year, you want to listen to what I'm about to share in terms of March and April, because they are very much shifting months. To me, that's an indication that things are going to be shifting in the world quite considerably, which isn't always a great thing. Because with these great shifts usually comes a lot of disruption first. So if you're planning an adventure, if I was in your shoes right now in the month of January, I'd be thinking, okay, I want to plan an adventure. Bearing in mind, this is showing up in the sign, in the air signs, this energy. I would start planning a studious adventure, an intellectual adventure, an adventure of mind and spirit, you know, not necessarily something that takes you to other countries. I probably wouldn't book anything until after March, April time. Just so that you know that, you know, what you're booking is likely to actually happen. There's a lot going on to unpack. And I haven't fully looked at these charts yet, just to, you know, share that with you. But just right now, that's what's coming into my mind to share with you. Now, what I do also like about the end of January is we've got this sort of energy in Aries that's building. Jupiter is in a conjunction with Juno. Juno is the goddess of marriage, but she's also about commitment and dedication and a bit of sensuality as well. So it's quite a good time to get involved with somebody. You know, it's bringing as much sensuality as you can handle, and I think there's this sort of feeling of hope that what you're getting excited about, what you're building on at the moment, where your ambitions are at the moment, are you know, you're fully committed to them. So I really feel like you've sold to yourself what you needed to. So it's a great starting place. And another thing that I quite like is Venus and Saturn together. So, you know, your plans can take shape, and you don't have to be driving yourself like in a miserable way. You know, Venus comes in, it kind of softens the deep levels of planning. You know, it just softens it. It says, hey, you don't have to work quite that hard. Let's just take our foot off the brake a bit. Let's see where there's a bit of flow. Maybe there's someone I'm collaborating with, or, you know, so yeah, things are moving, definitely moving. I'm wondering what else there is in January that I wanted. Oh, I don't want that. Don't want that. Okay, so I'm happy with January for now. Let me just check my list. Yeah, right at the end of January, Venus goes into the sign of Pisces. And when Venus goes into the sign of Pisces, she's very happy. She's pretty exalted there. She's in a really great place, in a really great space. Venus is very ethereal. The level of love and compassion we have for each other, in particular, forgiveness is at an all-time high. It's deeply romantic. Venus in Pisces is one of the, I think, nicest signs to get married under. She's pretty super duper. She's pretty special. So as we're ending January, there is this softening effect, as well as we're starting to move forwards. It's almost like we're starting to move forwards and we're not being so mean to ourselves. I would also say from the 22nd right the way through February, and I think March, we don't have anything retrograde. The next thing to go retrograde will be Mercury, and I'll get the exact date as we go through. So anyway, in February, no retrogrades all month. We've got the full moon, Mercury. Okay. So I'm not going to really talk about Mercury going into Aquarius or Venus into Aries so much, but I will look at the full moon and the new moon, and then talk about the moon conjunct Jupiter at the end on like 22nd. Okay, right. So February then. Here's the chart for the 1st of February. So it's like the doorway to February. As we're starting February, the thing that I'm noticing the most, you'll notice here Pluto's coming to the end of its stay in Capricorn. Saturn's getting closer to the end of here. All of a sudden it gets a wriggle on and it seems to move very fast. Now, I am quite interested. We've got this opposition between Pluto and also Lilith that's still playing out. It did start at the end of January, but it's still in there. As we move into February, with the sun in the sign of Aquarius and also Saturn in the sign of Aquarius, we've got this feeling of it's time for us to be a bit more individual. It's a time for us to be a lot more original, really follow the beat of our own drum. It's a lot more communal, but it's kind of like, yeah, we need to accept each other as we are. We need to not be so judgmental, and also it doesn't matter if things are a little bit higgledy-piggledy. It doesn't matter if things are a little bit erratic. Creativity comes in lots of different ways. We've also got Venus in Pisces. We've still got Neptune in Pisces. We've got Vesta in Pisces. So we're in quite a nice space. The sort of hangover to Capricorn is just Mercury, but Mercury's going direct now. So it's almost like we can start moving forwards. It's kind of a benign month, really. It feels kind of friendly, I would say, would be a good word to describe it, especially seeing as we go in, we've got the moon in Gemini sort of leading us on. So it feels kind of like one of those non-months. It's not a month that's going to be pushing us necessarily. It's not going to be triggering us so much. I guess what I really feel for it overall is that we are step by stepping forwards with a little bit of relief. But there's nothing really to write home about. It's almost like we're just starting things, but we've not really gained a lot of momentum. I will say by the end of the month, lots of things are coming. Now, what I mentioned at the start here with Pluto and Lilith, this has been going on since January. And I speak about it a lot more in my January update. But Pluto shows where control is and where we have been controlled and possibly manipulated. And then Lilith shows where we get suppressed and where we get highly pissed off about it. And so this opposition that has been playing out all the way through January, but there were other things going on. We are able to listen to it. What I would say is if you are able to take some time at the end of January or throughout February to work out where you felt suppressed and repressed over the last few years, to work out where it feels like things aren't quite fair, where you are really wanting freedom, where you're really wanting equality in some way, and where you just feel like things haven't been working out in your favor because of outside manipulations. There might be things that have been playing out. I mean, it's pretty much like your deepest, darkest things, because Lilith often shows us a place where we're almost afraid to go because it might get a bit ugly. I think those of you that are quite open and honest to themselves, that really notice what they're feeling, you'll already be aware what has been playing out. You'll already know some of these games that you've been playing over the last few years. And so what I would just say as a little bit of preparation homework, if you want to do it, because these readings are all about finding freedom and clarity and feeling good about yourself. And what I would say is just get conscious of it, because towards the end of this month, we've got the opening of a time of great healing that takes us from the 22nd of February right the way through to the 5th of April. So just allow yourself to start noticing what's going on. And so the new moon on the 20th, I don't think I'm going to mention the full moon, but the new moon on the 20th, which is in the sign of Pisces, I think is particularly strong, because we've got this new moon energy. It's in a conjunction with Saturn, and that it's interesting. For those of you that know anything about what's it called? Transactional analysis. Transactional analysis is the way that some people, psychologists, see the personality. So we've got like our adult self, our parent self, and we've got our childlike self, and they're both, all three of those can be ascribed to one of these planets. So Saturn is the parent, here is the child, and the sun here is the adult. And transactional analysis looks at where we are in terms of that. Are we hypercritical? Are we bossy? Are we cruel and mean as represented by the parent? We could just be very nurturing. Are we a playful, free child, or are we a spoiled or needy child? And, as an adult, are we assertive, or are we really sort of playing out some kind of passive aggressivity? So having this new moon, I think, gives us an opportunity to blast through and find ourselves in a place of just being assertive, seeing everything as information. It's sensitive as hell because it's in the sign of Pisces, but we've got this opportunity to be really honest and see everything as information, and with no judgment. So something happens and we say, oh, that's interesting. Okay, thank you. A bit of information. And we're not like having this information and judging it and putting it into a category of good or bad, or must berate, or must hurt myself, must tell myself off in some way, or worse still, tell somebody else off. It's a time of us taking in information and allowing it to filter through. And we've got a real good chance to reset our style, with a certain element of maturity and sensitivity. The maturity represented by Saturn and Aquarius, which is really quite unattached. And then we've got the sensitivity of both our emotions and our personality in Pisces. So that's worth watching out for. Yeah, I like that. I think I'm going to move on. So that's on the 20th. Now, on the 22nd, I was going to share with you, by the 22nd, we've got the moon in a conjunction with Jupiter here, and it's right in between Jupiter and Chiron. And so this is the start of a really awakening time. So Jupiter is very much about expanding things, expanding patterns. Jupiter likes to bring our patterns out and really make them visible. Jupiter is very direct in the sign of Aries, is very enthusiastic, is very optimistic, but is a real go-getter and kind of charges straight forward. Then we got the moon. Jupiter and the moon together make us highly emotional and direct, and expanded, and our boundaries are really quite off. Like, we really don't know where our boundaries are when the moon and Jupiter are together. It's made slightly easier because it's in the sign of Aries, which is quite boundary based and related. And then we've got Chiron. Now, Chiron is the wounded healer. He is all of our childhood wounds that we've not managed to yet heal. And so with Jupiter and the moon, we're kind of diving headlong into our insecurities, and they're magnified because of Jupiter, and also magnified because we've got the moon there. And it's a really strong time of where we might ask ourselves, does this really belong to me? Now, this insecurity that I've been carrying, this awful childhood trauma that I've been carrying, am I just carrying it for my parents or like my big sister, my younger brother? This guilt that I've got, is this my guilt problem or is this like a generational thing? It's a time of us getting very clear and needing to get clear, because all of a sudden these feelings seem to be kind of compounding onto us. So this is at the end of February. And the reason I'm really making a big deal about it is because as we go into March, March is a massive month with so much change. I'm just going to my list here. So on the 2nd of March, Venus is in a conjunction with Jupiter. So again, we've got Venus and Jupiter and Chiron together. So we've got a feeling of compassion and forgiveness with this expanding heart. That's definitely worth noting, and that's quite helpful in terms of our healing. Then on the 2nd, Mercury goes into Pisces, which makes us feel so much more emotional in terms of how we're expressing what we've been feeling. We might want to actually talk about it with people. And then on the 3rd of March, we've got Venus going into a conjunction with Chiron. So she moves from Jupiter. It's like Venus is about love and compassion and kindness and flow. And, you know, she kind of picks up the enthusiasm to dive right in from Jupiter. And it is a feeling of well-being. It's like, I can do this. I can do this. I can definitely do this healing. And then a day later, she kind of hits the floor. She like dives right into the insecurities. And she brings some compassion in. I think the 3rd of March is the day when you really want to hug your inner child. Hopefully by then you've written a few things down, about what it is that you've been feeling. You'd have been getting quite conscious about it. And so it's a good time to give yourself a beautiful big hug. Then 5 days later, Saturn goes into the sign of Pisces. So finally, Saturn is off our backs. You know, Saturn for the last 5 years or so has been in either the sign of Capricorn or Aquarius. And Saturn rules both of those. And so Saturn is quite pushy, like works hard, pushes us really hard. Isn't it funny? I mean, I can definitely say in the last 4 years, 4 or 5 years when Saturn has been in these signs, I've really felt an immense pressure to work hard. So I like the fact that hardworking Saturn is going into Pisces, which is a place of emotions and endings and summations. And it's also quite creative and quite psychic, so Saturn here, I think we can just relax a little bit, which will actually help us sort of get our minds a bit straight. And then on the 12th, we've got Jupiter in a conjunction with Chiron. So Jupiter is, it's so big, this healing potential. It's just like massive. Then later on, the following week, we've got Venus going into Taurus. There's kindness and also the feeling of money. Issues coming up. It's time for us to pull our finger out a little bit, kindly, of course, because Venus is pretty much into luxury. She's not going to want to break a fingernail. And Mercury goes into Aries, which helps us to think quite straightforwardly. And then, so this is kind of interesting. The 19th to the 23rd is actually the 19th to the 26th of March feels pretty strong as weeks go. So we've got Mercury going to Aries. So our thinking is very direct. Then we've got the spring equinox, which is where the sun goes into Aries. Then we've got on the 23rd, we've got Pluto going into Aquarius. Now, this is a big theme, and I will be talking about this separately for sure, both in a March update, but also in a separate Pluto and Aquarius update. Like Pluto has been in Capricorn for a really long time, like such a long time, pushing on 20 years, I guess. Yeah, about that. And Pluto really creates a generation. It's about transformation. It's a slow moving, slow acting, deep acting kind of medicine for us all. Pluto really shows us, I think, if you've ever had like Pluto go over one of your personal planets, over one of your angles, you'll know the feeling where it feels like nothing you do resolves things. Every bit of effort to control something and to get your life back to normal, it just feels really, really difficult, like a struggle. And the only way really through with Pluto is to accept things, accept that there is life and death, accept that some things don't work out. And that's one of the hardest things for us to learn, is we come up against our own ego. And so as Pluto goes into the sign of Aquarius, we could actually say, lots of people say, are we in the age of Aquarius yet? I would say that as Pluto's transitioning into Aquarius, it's just coming more into view. I don't think it's something that just starts and then just finishes, but I would say we are kind of in it now. Like when Pluto was in Capricorn, it was very much about changing systems in a corporate way. The rise of the corporation has just gone from strength to strength. If you think about in the 80s, 1980s and 1990s, you really had Pluto in the sign of Sagittarius creating these great big vast fun exciting structures, because Sagittarius is such a trendsetter, and it's kind of out there. It wants to be futuristic, it wants to be fun and stuff. And we became absolutely addicted to pleasure and spending. And Sagittarians have definitely got a reputation for being in the moment and being quite enthusiastic. And then when Pluto went into the sign of Capricorn, things got quite steady and serious, where banks and insurance companies became very important. For instance, like people that like car hire places, you would think their business is car hire, but actually their insurance, their biggest thing is selling insurance and selling the finance. A bit like selling houses. Is it just about selling houses, or is your business actually about helping these extra bits of financial packages come into place? All of this kind of corporate conglomeration became part of our life, where we just started to realize that almost like we were owned by the corporations and governments, and it's almost like a bigger overreach, and it's created a very solid appearing structure around us that feels so final. And one of the difficulties for human beings is to yield to that. It seems like something that you can't yield to. So lots of people have kind of dropped out and moved away from big business and tried to do their own things. Now Pluto's coming into Aquarius. This is interesting because Aquarius has a couple of different vibes, or two main vibes. One of them is freedom and originality, and doing your own thing, really doing your own thing. So you might have a bit of the explorer, you might have a bit of the philosopher that goes AWOL and does his own thing. But Aquarius is also very technological and also very futuristic and very AI. And so I'm pretty sure that the governments, as we all know, are already trying to chip and pin everyone and move money to being completely electronic, and also to create an interface between people and AI technology, like chips in the hand to activate things and whatnot. And I suspect that during this time, as Pluto goes into Aquarius, we are coming into this time where the way the world is, it's part AI, part natural, and one of our challenges is to learn how to do it. But of course, Aquarius really hates corruption at any level. Aquarius, the sign of Aquarius, despises any kind of corruption and really wants a free society, and also one that's quite equal. Now, at the moment, the sort of echoes of equality and diversity and opportunity for everyone in terms of the rise of liberalism and socialism is such a huge theme for us at the moment. And I also think we might even see the corruption behind those movements as well. I think as Pluto goes into Aquarius, we are going to get underneath everything and really see where the dirt is, to see if these things really are giving us freedom. Are they really giving us innovation? Are they really giving us creativity and something futuristic? Or are they actually trying to suck us into something? So this is going to be an interesting challenge, but this is just the entry point. Pluto will go retrograde later on this year, go back into Capricorn. It's like a taster. And then at the beginning of 2024, Pluto's back in Aquarius for the rest of its time, which is an age. If you've got an angle in the sign of Aquarius, which I do, or the sun or the moon, or in fact any planet, this is going to be quite a big time. When Pluto goes over one of your planets, it creates quite a lasting impression. It's no surprise that when it's been in the sign of Capricorn for the last 20 years, most of the clients that come to astrologers have had their sun or their moon or their ascendant in the sign of Capricorn. They've got a lot going on in Capricorn to unpack. So yeah, this is big. So that's Saturn into Pisces, Pluto into Aquarius. We've also got Mars going into Cancer. Mars, it does change signs every couple of months. But Mars going into Cancer, things are going to get very sort of family oriented. We're a lot more determined to protect ourselves, which is quite interesting. And like I said, we've got this Chiron opening, this opening to healing that is getting in very, very deep. So there's a lot of different energies in March. Given that Saturn represents bureaucracy and legal things, they're very much the foot soldiers of the powers that be, and Pluto represents the powers that be. Bearing in mind both of these two are changing signs in the same month, to me is an indication that maybe we are starting to rule ourselves, or there is a changeover, quite a big and drastic changeover. That could be quite interesting, couldn't it? But with any kind of big changeover, that it usually comes with chaos. It usually comes with it usually comes with a lot of there's a lot of healing involved. So yeah, I think March is the busiest and most intense time of 2023. As we go into April, things are interesting. We're still going through that healing vibe. The sun is in a conjunction with Chiron at 15 degrees on the 5th of April. That's the end of the planets aspecting Chiron in conjunctions. So just those dates again, from the 22nd of February to the 5th of April, they're the most important times for healing. Now, if you are born into the sign of Aries, and if in particular, if you know where your planets are, if you've got anything around 15 degrees, say 5 to 20 degrees in the sign of Aries, this is going to have been a really intense time. Now, based on how it is in your chart, they might be beautifully lined up, or they might be quite challenging. It could be quite useful to unpack it further. So if you do want me to unpack it for you, then just give me a shout. It's louisa@gmail.com. You can go to www.feelgoodastrology.com/store and book an appointment with me, and I can help step you through it. Now, the big changes in April is that we've got a solar eclipse at 29 degrees Aries. This is actually a new moon. If I'm not mistaken, where was the new moon before that? I didn't even put it into my March list. There you go. My March list was so long, I didn't even put in when the previous new moon was. I must amend my list. But this is we've got this new moon in Aries on the 20th of April. It's a pretty big one. It's a solar eclipse. It's total solar eclipse. So it's got very, very strong energies. The last few degrees of Aries is one of those degrees that has been linked into a lot of charts in terms of tyrants and bullies and things like that. So it really wouldn't surprise me if around April and also around that time, I think the 15th to 20th of April, there've been more kind of acts of aggression, like mass shootings and things like that. So it's just off the top of my head. But I remember this time of year always makes me go, okay. Need to keep an eye on that. So seeing this total solar eclipse at 29 degrees Aries makes me go, ooh, this is quite important. So yeah, it feels like we've gone through this healing process from the end of February to the 5th of April. And then as April progresses, it's like we're given a test to see just how resourceful we are. Have we really gone through the Aries theme? The Aries theme, of course, if you know about astrology, is about individuation. It's like, how do I find myself? How do I express myself? How do I move forwards? How can I be independent? All of our healing and stuff that we've been carrying, it's nearly always stuff that we've been carrying for other people. It's almost like in this March to April time, we've been unpacking our relationship to other people and how we can take full responsibility for ourselves, how we can really grow as people and and deliver ourselves into a life that we can create for ourselves. Now, I don't mean to say that in a way that sounds like everyone's going to be alone or anything like that, but like we're born into this world naked. We leave probably clothed, but you know, it, like we don't leave with others necessarily. We're like, when we come out of our body, we're coming out of our body on our own. Just like when we're born into our body, it's our life. And yes, we co-create with other people. And a lot of the healing that needs to take place for us all is about understanding our relationship to others and where we are fully responsible in our lives. So by the time the solar eclipse comes at the last degree in Aries, we better hope that we've developed this independence quite well, because we'll be tested. It could be quite fiery. And then on the same day, Mercury goes retrograde. So that's our first starting retrograde of the year from Mercury. We usually have 3. So we came into the year with a Mercury retrograde, but this is Mercury retrograde on the 20th. And then also on the 20th of April. So this is a very, very big day. The sun also changes signs into the sign of Taurus. So the sun in Taurus is about getting sort of more money, being a lot more focused on money. So I would say that the 20th of April is about financial independence. So again, that might be something you want to set as a goal back in January, so that I'm not suggesting you'll manage it in 4 months necessarily, but if you can start planning so that as these energies are coming in, the energies are helping you fix your situations. Okay, moving on. May then is relatively kind of straightforward. Pluto goes retrograde at 0 degrees Aquarius. But I've spoken a bit about Pluto, and I will do separately. There's a lunar eclipse on the 5th of May. That's a great big full moon in the sign of Scorpio. That could be quite big, because full moons have very big energies, in particular big lunar eclipses, and Scorpio is a pretty intense sign. We've also got Jupiter going into Taurus, which is big. Jupiter will be there for about a year. We've also, a few days later, got the new moon in Taurus at 27 degrees. So as these months are progressing, May has got Jupiter going into Taurus is the biggest thing, I would say. Now, the energy of Jupiter in Aries is that, we are bursting forth into our independence and getting excited about it. As it goes into Taurus, our challenge is financial. It's in terms of resources. It's in terms of luxury. It's also in terms of feeling settled. So we might be expanding into settledness. We might be expanding into saving. We might be expanding into security. So they're really big themes. And if you are born in the sign of Taurus, or have got important things like a planet, the moon, or an angle in the sign of Taurus, this is going to be quite a lucky time for you, because Jupiter also shows us where we're lucky. Then June, it's a month where things seem to be going into retrograde. So the initial speed of the year, it started off in January a little bit slow, a little bit clunky. Then from the 20th of January, it started to speed up, and it's kept that pace all the way through. As we hit June, there's a bit of, it's almost like the foot is coming off the pedal a little bit. Jupiter goes conjunct the North Node right on the 1st of June, which I think is a big thing. It really shows us how on track we are in terms of humanity. It shows us, are we on track karmically? Where are we going too far? Where are our limits? It's also a time to look at where we've come from and what we've learned along the way. We've got a full moon in Sagittarius on the 4th. That's a time to, again, it's got quite a Jupiter theme, because Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. It would be a time to really, really look at our behavior in terms of, are we going too far? Because Jupiter and Sagittarius has got this kind of sort of massive potential. Venus is going into sign of Leo, which is very nice and very friendly. So friendship should be pretty good, especially seeing as a week later, Mercury's going into Gemini. So, June is quite friendly and quite expressive. As Pluto goes retrograde into Capricorn, and then Saturn goes retrograde, It's interesting. It's like we got a taste from March to June of a bit of a shape of how our future might be. And then as we get to June, it's like, okay, we're just rewinding everything. It's like things were tested, I think, in March to June to see what would happen. And I think we're starting to hit the brakes now. And for the next 4 months or so, it looks like we're just rewinding, watching our paces, watching our steps, what needs tweaking before we move forwards again. The new moon in Gemini on the 18th is very good for us to analyze that and to work out where we've made a few mistakes. And that's arriving just before the summer solstice, which is on the June the 21st. And the sun goes into the sign of Cancer. And then right at the end of the month, Neptune goes retrograde as well. So, as we hit June, there's this slowing down of things, which is kind of cool because it's starting to bring in the idea of the summer holidays. According to where you live in the world, you might get a pretty big event, like like in Europe, for instance, mainland Europe. Things really start to slow down in June, and then but by July, we're all starting to take holidays. It's the school holidays, and then in September it tends to sort of like start up again. But anyway, June is starting to slow down. July gives us quite a good idea of what's to come in March and May of 2024, because we've got this conjunction between Jupiter and Uranus. Now, it's not quite a conjunction. They're as close as they're going to be in the sign of Taurus together. And they're going to create quite a bit of alchemy. So we've got this expansion and originality and fun and innovation, in particular to do with money. So again, there's a lot of mention about money. So there's healing and money are big themes. Now, in March, April, and May of 2024, Jupiter will be in a conjunction with Uranus. And at that time, we'll really see how it gets launched. So I don't know, like Uranus in Taurus can definitely be about the digitalization of currency, but it also brings up issues of crypto. So Jupiter conjunct Uranus in July looks like quite an interesting time for these more exciting currencies and what's going on. So yeah, watch that space. If you are an investor, it's worth really keeping your eyes peeled for these sudden trends coming in. Then mid-July, we've got the North Node going into the sign of Aries and the South Node going into the sign of Libra. And then on the 23rd, we've got Venus going retrograde. Now, Venus going retrograde, it happens every couple of years, and she's retrograde for, I think, 40 days. It's usually quite a big deal for people. So it's interesting that at the start I was saying, get ready to see what's coming in March and May of 2024. When Venus goes retrograde, it's usually good to see where you were the last time Venus was retrograde in the same sign. She goes every 8 years. Venus will be in retrograde in the same sign that she was last retrograde in, 8 years ago. So where are we? July 23rd, 2023. So we would be looking, if you want a taste for how July is looking, you might want to consider what was happening when Venus was retrograde in 2015, which was the summer of 2015. And if I cast my mind back, I was pregnant with my second child, but there were all sorts of different family issues going on at that time. Lots of family issues, sort of like in-law type things. A lot of the feelings that we have during the Venus retrograde time come up again. So it's almost like in July, we need to be time travelers. So we need to watch what goes on in terms of Jupiter conjunct Uranus at the beginning of the month until mid-month, in terms of themes of interesting ideas, expansion. It's going to give us an idea of how we can launch things in March, April, and May of 2024. But then in terms of how to manage the Venus retrograde from July the 23rd, you might want to consider what was happening back in 2015. When Venus goes retrograde, you're often brought up close and personal to all of your old hurts to do with like old relationships, people that you no longer see but wish you were able to, or those failed relationships, where for for any old reason, somebody just doesn't accept you. Venus going retrograde is also something that is quite useful in terms of people that are selling things with a lot of value, because we attach extra value to things that are very personal to us. So house prices can go through the roof during this time, and people will pay a lot more to get the thing that they really, really want, because they're putting a lot more love energy onto it. They're putting so much more personalized energy onto it, but it's not necessarily a true price. I think things get very inflated. So bearing in mind that there's Jupiter conjunct Uranus in July, which could have something to do with cryptocurrency and changing markets, and then Venus retrograde, which can inflate prices kind of artificially. That's something definitely to work out, to look into. Oh, there's so much. I'm actually getting quite tired of this. Now, August, I haven't got anything highlighted at all. It's just your usual full moon, new moon. Mercury goes retrograde at 21 degrees in Virgo. It's just things moving along normally, not as fast as the rest of the year. The full moon in Aquarius will get us to look at how our innovations are stressful, how our co-creations are stressful. Are we getting enough attention or not? So those themes will definitely come up. The new moon in Leo will be us sort of taking back sovereignty and feeling more empowered in ourselves. But on the 23rd of August, we've got our second Mercury retrograde. We've also got Uranus retrograde at 23 degrees. Right at the end of the month, we've got a full moon in Pisces. Now, that's going to be an interesting one if you're a Pisces or a Virgo out there. The full moon in Pisces is often quite an emotional event. So that's right at the end of August. September, Jupiter's going retrograde. And like I say, I'll talk more about the overall themes in individual readings. The biggest thing about September, really, I think, is just that we've got the autumn equinox. So I always like the starts of the seasons because they show me another set point for us to move forwards on. But October is coming into view. October. So the big news with October is we've got 2 eclipses. So the first one is like a solar eclipse. It's basically a new moon in the sign of Libra. Now, the themes of Libra are about togetherness and partnership. And so this is definitely a time where we are thinking in terms of new starts, new collaborations, and really thinking how we can work together. Now, Venus is still in Virgo at that time. Mars has gone into Scorpio. So it's like we are very motivated. We are very determined. And yet we want to be of service in the way that we have our relationships. So it's quite interesting. And then at the 28th of October, we've got the full moon, which is in the sign of Taurus. Interesting. Both of those signs are ruled by Venus. So the new moon in Libra, the ruling planet of Libra is Venus. And then the full moon in Taurus, Venus is also the main ruler of. So it's like whatever we're starting in terms of partnerships on the 14th of October, by the 28th of October, we're coming to close that. We've grown it to its maximum potential, and it's time just to sit in the luxury of it and not take it any further. To me, it feels like whatever relationship ideas we've got, or any ideas on partnerships that we're growing from the new moon, by the time we get to the full moon, which is the lunar eclipse, it's time to stop trying to grow it because it could get out of control. Taurus is quite moderate. It doesn't want things to get completely out of control. It's about sweetness, and it's about, apart from wealth, they do quite like growing their wealth, but it is about comfort as well. So I would really watch what's going on. The full moon in Taurus has the sun in Scorpio. Things can really get out of control at those times. So start off your partnerships in a very sweet way, and then grow them, and then just really monitor what's going on around the full moon, just to make sure that it doesn't go that, just that bit too far. November just has sign changes really, and your usual new and full moon. We've got Saturn going direct again, which is interesting. It feels like we can get a little bit more organized. The new moon in Scorpio is quite a clearing event. And then we've got the full moon in Gemini right at the end of the month, which, if you're a Sagittarian, is usually quite difficult. The full moon in Gemini tends to get people up in arms and quite fiery in terms of telling people what's what. And then as we go into December, we're going back into a moment of sleepiness. Mercury's going back into Capricorn, which is where it is when we start the year. Venus is going into Scorpio, so we're a lot more quiet and private in terms of our friendships and our relationships. Neptune's going direct, which is nice. It feels like we can relax a little bit and feel a little bit clearer. The new moon in Sagittarius is clearing. We get our third Mercury retrograde at 8 degrees Capricorn, which is really funny because in January of this year, Mercury stopped being retrograde at 8 degrees Capricorn. And then we just got the winter solstice. Chiron's moving direct. Jupiter's moving direct. And at the end of the month, we've also got a full moon in Cancer, which really just kind of sums up the whole year, really gets us back into our homes, and understanding the difference between what's at home and what's business. And also very much about the mother and the father. If I was to sum up this whole year, and bless you if you managed to listen this far in, I would say that most of the action really takes place between the end of February and I would say mid-May. They are like the 2 months, say 60 days from mid-Feb to it's 3 months. February, March, April, May. Yeah. The 3 months from mid-Feb to mid-May, that's where the entirety almost of what's going on in this year is really taking place. There's a lot to unpack, and we need the rest of the year to slowly kind of get on and rebuild and settle and find new context for what has occurred. Every year obviously has sign changes and whatnot, but not normally with Pluto. Pluto moving is a really big event. Pluto will be moving again in 2024. It will go into Aquarius for good and stay there for a long time. And then the next big sign change is with Neptune, which starts transitioning in 2024 to 2025 into the sign of Aries. Another really big step. So I just think these next couple of years are going to be really, really important, because the way we are as a human community is likely to change. And there will be pressures. There will be people trying to determine it for us. They're the people that got rich and fat in the definite Pluto in Sagittarius times, and definitely in the Pluto in Capricorn times. And yet there's a whole bunch of new generations being raised that want to see a very different world. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. At the end of the day, there's not much we can really do in terms of managing like Pluto in Aquarius. There's not much we can all do in terms of changing things at an actual physical level with the people at the top, bar become one of them. And I'm pretty sure that anyone at the top of anything has been honeypotted, has been blackmailed, and is somehow under the pay of people. I don't think you can get that far, sorry to be so cynical, without somehow paying allegiance to this idea of supremacy or rulership. But I do see that we have our intentions, and we do have our own level of energy. And I don't think we're fully, not quite a few are, but I don't think we're all as clued up to the immense power that each and every one of us has in determining our lives and shaping our lives. And I think that's where the real potential for all of us is. You know, our attention has been so dedicated to seeing what's going on outside of ourselves for such a long time. We've almost been traumatized into this pattern, and definitely educated into it through mass media and entertainment and music and art and fashion and all of that jazz and the politics. And then, you know, add in um, a pandemic of sorts. And Bob's your uncle. You know, we've created this scene change, but the potential for us to see beyond that and recognize that the only thing we can really control is how we feel. And then with these really big healing events of all the personal planets connecting up with Chiron, and then Jupiter connecting up with Chiron. Now, Jupiter and Chiron, the last time they connected in Aries was over 50 years ago. So it's a pretty big event. And that happening, you know, in the same month as Pluto's going into Aquarius and Saturn's going into Pisces. The rulership of, you know, the powers that be, and also the middlemen that enact the desires of the powers that be, you know, they're changing, they're adapting, they're evolving, and so can we. And so if there was one final message of this video, I would say this is your year to become your own authority. This is your year to become the authority in managing your energy system. This is the year to become friends with your body, and to really hear your body and to let go of trauma. In particular, as I said at the start, if you're born with Chiron in Aries, or if you're, say, 4 or 5 years away from 50, this is going to be a very poignant time. The more you can do to get this healing cleared up now, the easier things are going to be as you hit 50, 51, when you get your Chiron return. I really see that 2023 is a healing opportunity. It's a chance for us all to move beyond where we were. I feel that in the last 2 or 3 years, we felt quite disempowered and disengaged. It's felt like the whole show has been about everybody else, and an agenda outside of ourselves. I see that as we go into 2023, we can make our agenda about us. And if we start to do that, and if we start to do it in good faith, and if we start to create the lives that we want in our heads and in our hearts, I do think things are going to change. So there you go. I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining me. You know, this is quite a lot of information, a lot of detail. And if you are interested in having the full breakdown, you know, my list, I will neaten it up. And you can drop me an email and I'll send it to you. It's quite interesting to put those dates on your calendar and to get, you know, very wise to all these different planetary flows and how you can work with them. I will be breaking it down on a month-by-month basis, and also doing a 5-minute forecast for every star sign each month, which is a lot more digestible. So anyway, thanks so much for joining me. If I can be of any help, then just drop me a line. But yeah, I wish you a beautiful 2023. Lots and lots of love to you. Bye for now.